For every hated superhero actor, there's one that fans support and love. When Marvel announced Captain Marvel, the hype was huge. This was the studio's first female-led film, and they set her up as the new face of the franchise heading into Avengers Endgame. On paper, everything pointed to success, but the reaction wasn't what Marvel expected. From the first trailers, some fans felt Larson's delivery seemed stiff, almost detached compared to the charisma people were used to from characters like Tony Stark or Thor. Once the movie hit theaters, those same criticisms stuck. Many called her performance wooden, saying the character felt more like a placeholder than the heart of the story. The backlash didn't stop at the film itself. Brie Larson made comments during press tours about diversity in Hollywood and film criticism that drew polarized reactions online. For some, she became a symbol of progress. For others, she came across as dismissive or confrontational, and the negativity snowballed fast. Even with Marvel giving her a central role in Endgame and confirming sequels, she's never been able to win over a majority of fans. To this day, her casting is one of the most debated in the MCU. And instead of being remembered as Marvel's next leader, she's remembered as one of its most divisive figures. But if Brie Larson's casting showed how quickly fans can turn on a performance, Robert Downey Jr.'s story shows the exact opposite. How one role can completely transform both a franchise and an actor's career. When Marvel Studios cast Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, it wasn't just a gamble, it was a risk that could have sunk the entire project. At that point in his career, Downey was best known not for box office hits, but for his personal struggles and run-ins with the law. Executives pushed for safer choices, but Jon Favreau fought for him, saying Downey's real-life story mirrored Tony Stark too perfectly to ignore.
This is exactly who I should be up here with. The man who literally started it all, who had the faith in me, and this connection we had.
From the opening minutes of Iron Man in 2008, that decision proved right. Downey's performance was effortless. Sharp humor, quick arrogance, but always carrying an undercurrent of vulnerability. He made Tony Stark flawed, but likable. A billionaire you could root for. Suddenly, a character that had never been a household name was leading the charge for an entirely new cinematic universe.
Secure. You want my property? You can't have it. But I did you a big favor. I have successfully privatized world peace.
Over the next decade, Downey became the anchor of Marvel. Every crossover event circled back to him. His chemistry with other heroes, his mentorship of Peter Parker, and his complex dynamic with Steve Rogers made his story feel like the spine of the MCU. Fans didn't just enjoy watching Iron Man, they invested in him. And then came Endgame. After 11 years, Downey delivered a finale that hit harder than almost any other superhero moment. His final line, his sacrifice, and the way the film framed his death wasn't just a character exit, it was the emotional payoff of a cultural phenomenon. Entire theaters went silent, then erupted. That's the kind of reaction you can't manufacture. It only happens when audiences truly love the actor at the center of it.
Iron Man.
Robert Downey Jr. didn't just play Iron Man. He redefined what superhero casting could be. He went from a Hollywood risk to the foundation of the most successful film franchise of all time. For fans, he's not just the man who wore the suit, he's the reason the Marvel Universe even worked. But while Downey became the face of Marvel's success, another casting choice ended up being remembered for all the wrong reasons, and it nearly dragged down an entire film with it. No other than Topher Grace. By the time Spider-Man 3 went into production, fans were begging to see Venom on the big screen. He was one of Spider-Man's most popular villains, a darker, more brutal mirror of Peter Parker. Expectations were sky high. But from the moment Topher Grace was announced, the casting didn't sit right with most fans. Grace was best known for his role on That 70s Show, a sarcastic, skinny kid next door type. Venom in the comics was built like a tank, ruthless, intimidating, and physically overwhelming. The disconnect was obvious before the cameras even rolled. And when the film finally released in 2007, the doubts were confirmed. Grace's version of Eddie Brock felt shallow, more whiny than menacing. Instead of being a terrifying threat to Spider-Man, he came across as an annoyance. To make matters worse, the movie was already overstuffed with villains. Sandman, Harry Osborn, and Venom all fighting for screen time. Venom, the character fans had waited years for, ended up being rushed and underdeveloped.
Wound. What you can't kill.
Eddie, the suit. You gotta take it off.
Grace wasn't the only problem. The studio pressured director Sam Raimi to include Venom against his wishes, but in the end, His performance became the face of the film's biggest flaw: wasted potential. Instead of being remembered as Spider-Man's deadliest enemy, his Venom became one of the weakest comic book villains ever put on screen. Even now, more than a decade later, Grace's casting is still brought up as an example of how badly miscasting can derail a character. For fans, Venom deserved better, and they had to wait until Tom Hardy's reboot to finally see it done right. And while Topher Grace's Venom showed how the wrong casting choice can sink a character, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine proved the exact opposite: how the right choice can define a role for nearly 2 decades. Hugh Jackman was first cast as Wolverine in 2000's X-Men. Not everyone was convinced. Fans of the comics pointed out he was too tall, too polished, and an unknown actor stepping into one of Marvel's most iconic roles. Expectations were cautious at best. But the moment he appeared on screen, all doubts started to fade. Jackman brought raw intensity to the role, mixing the animalistic rage of Wolverine with just enough vulnerability to make him human. He captured both sides of the character, the savage fighter and the reluctant hero, and made it look effortless. Over time, he became the face of the entire X-Men franchise. Through reboots, prequels, and spin-offs, Jackman remained the constant. He played Wolverine for 17 years, the longest run any actor has had as a superhero. And unlike so many long-running roles that eventually wear out their welcome, his never did. If anything, his final chapter only elevated his legacy. That came in Logan, 2017. Stripped of costumes and bright spectacle, it was a brutal, emotional story that gave Wolverine the ending he deserved. Jackman's performance there wasn't just praised as great superhero acting, it was praised as great acting, period. Critics and fans alike called it one of the best films the genre had ever produced, largely because of the weight he brought to it.
Take your friends and run. They'll keep coming and coming. You don't have to fight anymore.
By the time he hung up the claws, Hugh Jackman wasn't just the guy who played Wolverine, he was Wolverine. For almost 2 decades, nobody else touched the role, and for many fans, nobody else ever should. But not every casting choice leaves behind that kind of legacy. In fact, Jesse Eisenberg's role as Lex Luthor turned into one of the most debated missteps in superhero movie history. Zack Snyder announced Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor in Batman vs. Superman, and the reaction was immediate confusion. Lex was supposed to be Superman's greatest rival, calm, ruthless, and commanding. Eisenberg was known for playing twitchy, awkward characters. From day one, fans questioned whether he had the presence to pull it off.
If you fly away, Martha also dies. But if you kill the bat, Martha lives.
And when the film came out in 2016, those doubts turned into backlash. Instead of the cold and calculating businessman fans expected, Eisenberg played Lex like an eccentric tech billionaire, full of nervous tics and erratic speeches. His performance felt scattered, almost cartoonish at times, and it clashed with the darker, more serious tone Snyder was going for.
Oh, beneath us, no. No, they come from the sky.
The problem wasn't just that he was different, it was that he never felt threatening. Lex Luthor is supposed to be Superman's equal in intellect and ambition, a villain who commands respect through sheer willpower. Eisenberg's version felt too unhinged, too small, and audiences couldn't take him seriously. Even critics who defended parts of the film almost universally agreed his performance didn't work.
In New York. Also, I was in this Batman movie, and the Batman movie was so poorly received, and I was so poorly received. I've never said this before, and it's kind of embarrassing to admit, but
over the years, Eisenberg's Lex has become one of the most debated aspects of the DCEU. Some argue Snyder's vision was unique but misunderstood, while most fans see it as a misfire that weakened the film's already shaky foundation. For many, his portrayal stands as one of the weakest versions of Lex Luthor ever put on screen. But if Eisenberg showed how a performance can pull audiences out of a story, Christian Bale proved how the right actor can ground even the most fantastical character in absolute realism. By the early 2000s, Batman on screen was in rough shape. Joel Schumacher's Batman had turned the character into a punchline, and the franchise looked dead. When Christopher Nolan stepped in to reboot the series, everything depended on getting Batman right. His choice was Christian Bale, a serious actor known more for transformative roles than blockbuster spectacle.
Not who I am underneath, but what I do that defines me.
From the start, Bale brought a level of intensity that audiences hadn't seen in a superhero before. In Batman Begins, he played Bruce Wayne not just as a man in a cape, but as someone shaped by trauma, rage, and discipline. He made the duality of the character believable, billionaire playboy by day, obsessive vigilante by night. And once the trilogy unfolded, his performance only grew more layered. The turning point, of course, was The Dark Knight. While Heath Ledger's Joker stole the spotlight, Bale's Batman gave the film its backbone. His moral struggles, his conflict with Harvey Dent, and his willingness to become the outcast at the end grounded the entire story. Instead of just being another superhero in a costume, Bale's Batman felt like a real man trying to shoulder an impossible burden.
See? You wanted me. Here I am.
Even in The Dark Knight Rises, which drew more mixed reactions, Bale's arc came full circle. He gave Bruce Wayne closure, something few superhero portrayals ever managed to achieve. It wasn't just about the action sequences or the voice, it was about giving Batman weight, dignity, and a sense of reality. To this day, many fans and critics still consider Bale the definitive Batman. Every new actor who takes on the role, whether it's Ben Affleck, Robert Pattinson, or anyone in the future, inevitably gets compared to him. His version set the standard not just for Batman, but for how grounded and serious a superhero film could actually be. But if Bale showed how the right actor can elevate an entire franchise, Gal Gadot is remembered for the exact opposite, an actress whose role sparked endless memes and backlash across the fandom. Gal Gadot was first cast as Wonder Woman. The reaction was mixed but hopeful. Fans weren't sure what to expect, but her debut in Batman vs. Superman surprised many. Then came Wonder Woman in 2017, and for a moment it looked like she'd silenced the doubters. The film was praised as one of the DCEU's brightest spots, and Gadot was celebrated as a symbol of empowerment, but over time the shine wore off. As the sequels and crossover films came out, criticism of Gadot's acting grew louder. Viewers pointed out her limited range, wooden line delivery, and a tendency to come across flat in emotional scenes. What was once seen as stoic and powerful started to feel stiff and unconvincing. By the time Wonder Woman 1984 hit theaters, the backlash had taken over. Instead of being inspired, audiences were making jokes. Memes about her acting spread across social media, and what had been an early success turned into an easy target. Gadot herself didn't help matters either. The infamous Imagine sing-along video during the pandemic made her the butt of more ridicule online, fueling the perception that she was out of touch. Today, Gadot's Wonder Woman feels more remembered for the controversy around her acting than for the cultural moment she created back in 2017. It's one of the clearest examples of how quickly fandom can shift and how once a performance becomes a meme, it's almost impossible to take it seriously again. And that sharp contrast becomes even clearer when you look at someone like Tobey Maguire, an actor whose performance, while far from perfect, became so beloved that fans still celebrate it decades later. When Sam Raimi cast Tobey Maguire as Peter Parker, it wasn't the obvious choice. Maguire wasn't known as an action star. He was a quiet, understated actor more associated with dramas. But that turned out to be the perfect fit for Raimi's vision of Spider-Man. In the 2002 film, Maguire captured something essential about Peter Parker: the awkwardness, the vulnerability, and the weight of trying to balance a normal life with extraordinary responsibility. He wasn't the coolest guy in the room, he was the kid who struggled, who got picked on, who never quite fit in. That authenticity is what made his Spider-Man resonate with so many people. Over the course of Raimi's trilogy, Maguire's portrayal became iconic. His emotional sincerity, especially in key moments, the death of Uncle Ben, the choice between love and duty, or that famous train sequence in Spider-Man 2, cemented him as more than just another superhero actor. He made audiences believe in the human side of Peter Parker.
I have a father. His name was Ben Parker.
Even when Spider-Man 3 stumbled with too many subplots and that infamous emo Peter dance, Maguire remained central to the character's charm. And years later, when he returned in Spider-Man No Way Home, the response proved just how deeply fans still cared. Seeing him back in the suit wasn't just nostalgia, it was a reminder of how much his version of Spider-Man shaped a generation.
Peter Parker, I've seen you too.
For many, Tobey Maguire isn't just one of several Spider-Men, he is Spider-Man. His performance set the standard for live-action Peter Parker, and decades later, the affection for him hasn't faded. Ezra Miller was announced as Barry Allen in the DCEU. The reaction was cautiously optimistic. The Flash had never had a major big-screen role before, and Miller was known as a rising star with indie credibility. Their quirky energy seemed like it could bring something new to the character, But from the first appearances in Justice League, the performance divided fans. Some enjoyed the lighter, awkward humor Miller brought to the role, while others found it forced and out of place. Instead of being the heart of the team, Barry often felt more like comic relief that didn't land. For a character who's supposed to be one of DC's most beloved heroes, the response was lukewarm at best.
Gotta go faster than the speed of light, far beyond the speed of light. Gotta break the rule, Barry, and you gotta do it now.
And then came the off-screen controversies. In the years leading up to the Flash movie, Miller was arrested multiple times, accused of violent outbursts, and became the subject of troubling headlines. Each story only amplified the criticism, turning what should have been their breakout moment into a public relations nightmare. By the time the solo film finally released in 2023, audiences were already soured.
Actor Ezra Miller has pleaded guilty after being accused of breaking into a Vermont home and stealing alcohol last year. The Justice League star agreed to a $500 fine and probation conditions that'll include mental health treatment.
The film itself didn't help. Despite years of build-up, the performance was still divisive, and the movie underperformed badly at the box office. What was once intended to reset the entire DC universe ended up being remembered as one of the franchise's biggest disappointments. Now, Ezra Miller's Flash is more associated with controversy than with the character itself. Instead of defining a new era for DC, the role became a cautionary tale about how both performance and personal behavior can sink even the most anticipated project. While Ezra's Flash left the DCEU in turmoil, Ryan Reynolds showed the exact opposite. How fighting for a role and refusing to give up can create a perfect match between character and actor. Few superhero roles have ever fit an actor as perfectly as Deadpool fits Ryan Reynolds. But what makes the story remarkable is how long it took to get there. Reynolds first played Wade Wilson in Wolverine, but that version of the character was a disaster. Stripped of the humor, covered in CGI, and literally silenced. Fans hated it, and Reynolds himself knew it was a betrayal of the character. Instead of walking away, he spent years fighting to get a real Deadpool movie made. Studios rejected it over and over, saying an R-rated superhero comedy wouldn't work, but Reynolds kept pushing, and when test footage leaked online in 2014, the fan response was overwhelming. That reaction finally forced the studio to greenlight the project. When Deadpool released in 2016, it was everything fans had wanted. Reynolds delivered non-stop sarcasm, meta-humor, and surprisingly, heartfelt moments. It wasn't just funny, it was authentic to the comics, and audiences connected instantly. The movie became one of the highest-grossing R-rated films ever, and Reynolds was suddenly seen as the definitive Deadpool.
I'm touching myself tonight.
What makes it stand out even more is how personal the role became for him. Reynolds wasn't just acting, he was the driving force behind the film's existence, and fans respected that. The sequel only reinforced his hold on the character, and now with his official crossover into the MCU, Deadpool's legacy is stronger than ever. Ryan Reynolds didn't just play Deadpool, he saved him. For fans, it's one of the clearest examples of how the right actor and the right role can be inseparable. But while Reynolds proved persistence could turn a doomed character into a phenomenon, Jared Leto showed how hype and expectations can backfire. Not many roles in superhero films carry as much weight as the Joker. Jack Nicholson made him iconic in the 80s. Heath Ledger redefined him in The Dark Knight with a performance that won an Oscar. So when Warner Brothers cast Jared Leto as the next Joker for Suicide Squad in 2016, the expectations couldn't have been higher. But from the start, things went wrong. Reports of Leto's extreme method acting flooded the press, sending dead rats, bullets, and other bizarre gifts to cast members. Instead of building intrigue, it made him look like he was trying too hard. And when the movie finally came out, the performance didn't live up to the hype.
Would you live for me?
Yes.
Careful.
Leto's Joker was flashy but hollow. Covered in tattoos, gold teeth, and exaggerated mannerisms, he came across less like a terrifying crime boss and more like a caricature. Compared to Ledger's grounded menace or Phoenix's unsettling descent, Leto's version felt artificial, a Joker built for shock value rather than depth. Fans and critics alike panned it almost immediately.
Got it. I am not someone who is loved. I'm an idea.
To make matters worse, much of his role ended up cut from the final film, leaving what did remain feeling even more disjointed. Instead of being the standout, Leto became one of the most ridiculed parts of the DCEU. Even years later, his short return in Zack Snyder's Justice League didn't change opinions. For most fans, his Joker is remembered not as a bold new take, but as one of the franchise's biggest missteps. And that contrast becomes even sharper when you look at Tom Holland, a casting choice that could have gone either way, but instead gave Marvel one of its most universally praised heroes. By the time Marvel introduced Tom Holland in Captain America: Civil War, fans had already seen two different versions of Spider-Man on the big screen. Tobey Maguire had defined the role for a generation, and Andrew Garfield had his own loyal following despite a short-lived series. Casting a third Spider-Man was a huge risk. Audiences were tired of reboots, and the bar was already high. But Holland's debut immediately changed the conversation. He captured something essential about Peter Parker that the previous versions only touched on: his youth. Holland felt like a real high school kid trying to figure out life while suddenly being handed superpowers. His mix of awkward humor, nervous energy, and wide-eyed wonder made him instantly relatable.
What are you doing? Hey, I'm Peter.
Tony.
What are you doing here?
It's about time we met. You been getting my emails, right?
Yeah.
Right?
As his films continued, Holland proved he could balance lighthearted charm with real emotional weight. In Spider-Man: Homecoming, he gave audiences the joy of seeing Peter stumble his way into heroism. In Infinity War and Endgame, he carried some of the franchise's most heartbreaking moments, showing that his version of Peter wasn't just comic relief, he was family to Tony Stark. And fans felt that bond deeply. The peak, of course, came in Spider-Man: No Way Home. Facing villains from across past franchises, Holland delivered a performance that finally pushed his Peter Parker into adulthood. The loss, the sacrifice, and the maturity he showed earned him respect even from fans who swore by Tobey or Garfield. By the end of the film, there was no question. Holland had become Spider-Man in his own right.
They're coming here because of me, right? Because I'm Peter Parker? So cast a new spell. But this time make everyone forget who Peter Parker is. Make everyone forget.
Today, he's widely seen as one of Marvel's strongest casting choices. For many, Holland blends the best of both worlds: the humor and heart of Spider-Man and the humanity of Peter Parker. And in a genre defined by casting hits and misses, his version is one of the rare cases where almost everyone agrees they got it right.